Welcome to biology. Today we're going to do some Mendelian genetics problems. I have posted an announcement. If you are in my biology class, please be sure to look at that announcement where I've pointed students in the right direction. As it pertains to this video, I'm going to be talking about genetics problems that are in the textbook, specifically on page number 216 of the textbook, which is the self-quiz and genetics problems that are at the end of chapter 13. Now, I strongly encourage students to watch the videos I've already posted in the genetics unit. Watch these in sequential order. Everything that we're doing in the genetics unit is in the order you see presented in these pages. We've already talked about the cell cycle and mitosis and diploid and haploid. That's going to come up again and over. We've described meiosis, and we've been talking about Mendelian genetics this week. So be sure you've seen the genotype and phenotype page. Read the dominant versus recessive alleles, homozygous and heterozygous, the main Mendelian genetics concepts. And be sure to watch these Mendelian genetics videos in order. They have embedded lectures. So watch the Mendelian genetics intro video part 1, then watch the Mendelian genetics lecture 2. Watch these videos in the order you see them here. I'm going to be putting Solving Genetics Problems lecture, which is what we're starting right now, here where it says Solving Genetics Problems. This is what I'm saying is coming out of the textbook, and the concepts that are related to the problems on page number 216 are going to come up in Wednesday's Mendelian Genetics Lab. So, get your textbook out. Open your textbook to page number 216 and follow along. If you're watching this live, this is being recorded. It'll be posted there in the modules, as well as my other platforms, Periscope and Mr. Siegel's Facebook page. But I am on page 216 in the textbook. And I'm going to start with the self-quiz. Number 1 in the self-quiz. A heterozygous individual has a blank for a trait being studied. A heterozygous individual has a blank for a trait being studied. We've been talking about alleles, and we've already said that you're having chromosomes in pairs because you get one half of your chromosomes from one parent and the other half of your chromosomes from the other parent. And that on each chromosome are many alleles, the alternate forms of various traits. So for any specific gene, an individual is going to have 2 alleles, one inherited from each parent. When describing if somebody has inherited the same alleles or different alleles is where the words homozygous and heterozygous, dominant and recessive come up. In a previous video, I had said we use the lowercase letters in genetics to denote a recessive gene because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't code for the production of any protein, and I illustrated that with blood types. Because both of the alleles are the same, that would be homozygous recessive. Here, the capital letters, capital H, capital H. The capital H, the capital letters mean it's a dominant allele. It actually does something. It codes usually for the production of some protein, an enzyme. And this would be homozygous dominant. Here we have big H, little h. The alleles are different. Heterozygous. And that's the answer to number one. A heterozygous individual has a blank for a trait being studied. A pair of non-identical alleles. Number two, an organism's observable traits. Brown eyes, straight hair, lobe, straight little finger, no hitchhiker's thumb, right thumb on top. Many traits that we've discussed in the class and that will be coming up again on Wednesday's lab. An organism's observable traits. That would be the phenotype. Keep these two words straight. The phenotype is the physical expression of a trait. Not to be confused with the genotype. The genotype is which alleles are there. So genotypes are described by the words homozygous, dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. Because homozygous dominant means, I'm just using A's, the genotype is two capital letters. Heterozygous, big A, little a capital letter and a lowercase letter. Homozygous recessive, two little a's. This is going to come up over and over and over. The genotype is two letters, where the phenotype is usually described in words. Brown eyes, curly hair, brown hair, red hair, lobe, no lobe. A whole bunch of traits that we'll be looking at here on Wednesday. And you would use words to describe those. Number three, and I talked about this in a previous video. In genetics, what does the F mean? It stands for filial. But what does it mean? In genetics, F stands for filial. Well, that means the offspring. We had talked about the progenitor generation, the P generation, that's the first generation, Adam and Eve, if you will. And then their children, the first filial, F1s, and then their children, F2. And I gave an example. If this is you, this is your parents, and this is your grandparents. Or, if you want, if that's you, that's your kids, and then the F3s are your grandkids. Now, although I am still live streaming on multiple platforms, in my studio software, I'm clicking the stop button for the video I'm going to post because this thing only works for lectures of about 10 minutes at a time. So bear with me while I go through the exercise of saving the first 10 minutes. And now I'm looking at number 4 in the lab book. F1 offspring of the cross of capital A, capital A. So it's telling us the F1 offspring of the cross. So it's telling us the P generation was homozygous dominant, big A, and it was crossed by homozygous recessive, 2 little a. So that's one parent and that's the other. And then it has, what will the offspring look like? That's what it's asking you. Well, let's do a Punnett square. Through the process of meiosis, this parent right here can either make some gametes that have the big A or other gametes that have a big A. While this parent's gametes will only have little a. So no matter how you slice the mustard, all of the offspring, all of the F1 are going to be heterozygous, big A, little a. And that answers your question for number 4. They're all heterozygous, big A, little a. Number 5. The second generation offspring of a cross between individuals who are homozygous for different alleles of a gene are called what? The second generation. So it's talking about the F2s of a cross between individuals who are homozygous for different alleles of a gene are called. Well, that was pretty easy. Now I'm going to take a break from the live stream for a moment, and we'll come back in about 30